And so yeah, we started a Facebook group. Next slide. So back in, actually, you better go to the next slide because this is just a picture of me, which is lovely. So way back 20 years ago, I was introduced to moth plant, and then of course you start seeing it everywhere. And because I was looking after environmental groups, I was able to take students out and pull moth plant. I was keeping tabs of it only in my head. I thought it was only me. I was recording about 5,000 locations in my head, and I knew this was just unsustainable. So I started mapping in Google Earth. And that lasted a good 5 years, mapping in Google Earth, until I got invited to participate with GIS Conservation, who got me the ArcGIS map system. And that one has naturally blended into the one that the EcoNet now use, and the colours have passed through. So we started off with 4 colorations, which just kept communication fairly simple. Red and purples were bad, and greens and yellows were good. So yeah, 2012, that's when Stamp officially became a Facebook group, even though I'd been sort of working on moth plant for 8 years before that. Next slide. And I knew other people were out there, but I just didn't know who they were. There was quite possibly people doing exactly what I was doing. So I started a Gmail account, I started a Facebook account, and I even opened a website, one of those free websites. And ironically, it still works. So that's quite funky. So that's my the extent of my online profile. Those 3 items. I have not and will not dabble in the others, simply because I'm 50 now and it's far too old for that sort of carry on. Slide. So yeah, build it and they will come. They, we started off small. It took a long time for us to finally get up to sort of 900 volunteers. We got a peak when I got invited onto a couple of television shows. I got invited to a radio show. Stamp has had a couple of magazine articles. And yeah, it's taken a while for 4,000 members to accumulate, but they certainly have. It's difficult to know how many of those members are participating in weed removal. A lot of them log into Facebook just to find out if they're definitely looking at moth plant, and some of them are saying, hey, I've seen it, can you guys do something about it? Which is fine, because word of mouth spreads, but more and more we're now trying to encourage the people who send emails to knock on their neighbour's door and do something about it first and foremost themselves, because we're now up to a ridiculous number of locations that take a long time to clear. Next slide. This is a pretty quick presentation, people. Unrelated to me, a gentleman at Mount Albert Grammar started a moth plant competition, got enough money for about $4,000 in prizes, and that was quite popular. So well done to him. Can't remember his name. He's no longer there, but the Howick local board and now other local boards took up the competition challenge. So each local board probably invests about $10,000 of money and man hours into organising the competition, and the most recent Howick one collected over 100,000 pods and seedlings. So it's a nice success. We sort of calculated that they sort of make a good 5% dent in the moth plant that's out there. So it's really nice that those competitions exist, but that is separate to my organisation, but at the same time still has quite a little bit of publicity through it. They've started getting people who enter the competition to record the locations. So I got a spreadsheet today just letting us know of all of these places that these volunteers from the school groups have gone to. One more slide, I believe.
You're fine.
So quite fortunately, with 4,000 members and with lots of places that moth plant grows, which is, technically speaking, it has been found in Christchurch and Nelson, but quite prolific in the north coastal areas. So Hawke's Bay was growing enough of it that they found us and they offered to open up a satellite group. I've just heard today that Kerry started a Facebook group for stamp, and we're looking for Whangarei and Tauranga to do the same. Maybe Hamilton would be nice as well. So we have 60 map editors now, which are affiliated with stamp, which takes a lot of workload off me. Initially, I was the only mug editing the map. But now that we've got 60 people editing, it definitely changes the colors a lot faster on the map. And so we've managed to get through about half of the dots that we're aware of. We've always got great aims. And so we publish some of the map data and statistics through Facebook. And we've got email addresses. So we're able to get in contact with a few people quite quickly. And yet we still haven't had anything resembling an AGM because we're not a group. We don't have any affiliated membership. We are just a loose collection of people who love getting out and about, removing stamp and removing moth plant. And that sometimes is in 2s and 3s, or I'm a solo person most of the time. Yeah, just a nice little hobby to get out and about and do stuff. So that's us in a nutshell. I'm pretty sure that's my last slide, Nigel. It is. So that's stamp. That's how you get started. You start 20 years ago, you do something 12 years ago, and in 12 years you can get sort of 4,000 people showing a good interest.
Thank you. So the one question we have in the is, what is the best herbicide to combat moth plant? As they use Met Gel.
Yeah, there's no official record of which is the best. Council seem to give me picloram gel, but at the same time, they're not big fans of it, even though they give it to me. So they say use in moderation. I'm more a big fan of manual removal, so I'll actually only poison the vines if I can't dig it out. So manual labour is preferable from my point of view.
Great, thank you. Well, if we'll move on to Nigel's presentation. So if you've got any more questions about moth plant and stamp, put those in the chat, and I'm sure they'll get answered. Brilliant, Nigel.
Hey, thank you, Tabitha. Yeah, so we're Old Man's Beard Free Wellington. We've been in this organisation for about 3 years, and we were clearing Old Man's Beard for about 3 years before that. Following on from Richard's acronyms, there is a group just up the road that I don't know if Chris Coslett is around, but I think his group's called Banish Old Man's Beard. So it's BOMB, and they're the bomb squad. And we did consider being the Wellington bomb squad, but we decided to be a bit more kind of looking at our target, or our ultimate goal is to get Wellington Old Man's Beard free. So yes, so we're trying to encourage Wellingtonians. So it's not just about us doing it; it's really getting the community on board to help control Old Man's Beard across Poneke. We think volunteers can clear up to about 80 or 90% of it. You know, there's quite a lot of it around, and council will never be able to control it all. So if we're able to do that, then we can channel the council contractors and money to tackle those sites that are too difficult for volunteers to work at. What we've got here is the CAMS dashboard showing in Wellington we've got about 3,500 weeds, Old Man's Beard patches on our map. We've cleared about 10% of them at the moment, which is the green and yellow ones. The red ones are growing, and the purple ones need checking. So there's work to be done. We're hoping to get to about 15% by the end of this Old Man's Beard a year. So we got a grant from council when we kicked off, and we used that to fund a marketing campaign. So we built our fancy new logo, which we're happy to share with other groups, and the designer, that was part of the conditions, that the logo could be shared. And we ran a marketing campaign on Facebook and got up to about 500 members, and on Instagram. And we built a website using Google Sites. And that really brought in a lot of volunteers, both, lots of guerrilla gardeners out there just doing it themselves, not always with the best technique. So we could give them training on how they should be clearing it. Also people working in reserves and existing groups that tackle it within their reserve. And we also run, working bees most Sundays, over summer and spring. And that's mostly in reserves. So there's a lot of Old Man's Beard in our reserves. We also do work in road reserve. We've had some local communities we work with on their local road reserve. We've worked with a couple of schools and play centres. And the picture here is in a cemetery. It's Crawley Cemetery, for anyone that knows Wellington. And we had about 40 people along this day. We ran training at the start of the session, and then everyone went around the graveyards and were clearing Old Man's Beard off the gravestones. And we work with householders. We've got a form they fill in if they need any help. We go around and advise them and give them typically up to about an hour's help clearing Old Man's Beard off their section. And then over winter, we plant out the areas that we've cleared Old Man's Beard from. So we plant out about 500 plants each year. We get great support from Wellington City Council. They give us tools and herbicide and training, and we need some certification to use herbicide. So we can now certify our volunteers as well in herbicide usage, which is just gel bottles. And we work closely with them to get their contractors clearing patches that support our mahi. And, that's often the safety at heights or the large patches that, it's going to take us forever to clear as volunteers, and they could be sprayed. So we used to use picloram. We've mostly switched over to use Glymax now. It doesn't affect nearby plants in the way that picloram does. And we're getting good results with that, both with cut and paste, but also scrape and paste and countersink and paste. And we work with Greater Wellington Council on determining the biocontrol site for the Old Man's Beard mite that was released a couple of years ago. We've extended the CAMS system. So when we started, there's a project started by Wellington City Council that already had about 1,500 Old Man's Beard observations in. So we used that as our base data, but we needed to get that into CAMS. So we built a system that syncs it hourly from iNaturalist into CAMS. From there, you can click on a weed, and we've just built a new system. If you click on this Update Weed Status button, it gives you a nice user interface, and you can update that, and then that updates iNaturalist, and it kind of goes round the loop that way.
Your 5 minutes are up.
Okay, just 2 more slides, if that's okay. So Highbury, we got one suburb we're working on now, so we've moved sort of out of the reserves into a suburb. I put out a press release earlier this year, and Jesse Mulligan picked it up within a few hours, and I was on the radio that day talking about it, which was great, because that then led us to find a volunteer who was really happy to go door knocking and do some of the easier control, and then we go up and help her to do any of the trickier patches. And the council have really come in with that as well, and got their contractors clearing this big patch, which is just up by the Zealandia fence line. And just ongoing, we work on Facebook. We got Noem has been weaving some baskets out of Old Man's Beard, which is fantastic. Sometimes we clear it, and then she takes it away and has a workshop and makes the baskets. Cool, and that's it. Cool.
Brilliant. So there's quite a few questions about Glymax and cut and paste. But a specific one is, how do you record where you control the Old Man's Beard, and will community follow up each area given the long seed bank life?
Yeah, so we put it into the CAM system, normally through iNaturalist. We've kind of come from the public side where everything's open and all the data's freely available from iNaturalist. We're starting, as we're moving to private property, starting to need to gradually record private. So That's where we might use CAM's in its existing form, but we use iNaturalist, and then we've got an extra project in there that lets us put in additional detail around the site, you know, the size of the infestation, the difficulty of the site, etc., and our control actions go in there. Then the map gets updated. Every year it resets to a purple color, which then needs checking again, and we go back and check it. And then we'll be moving that to a 2-year cycle after you've controlled it and had it clear for a year.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So if anybody wants to know any of these apps that people are talking about, just put a question into the chat and we can send you links to some of these apps if you're not using them already. Brilliant. Hannah, we'd love to hear about Muriwai Weed Walkers. It sounds awesome.
Hi. Okay, so our operation is smaller than this, and in fact, it was for a while. It was just me. The process started off with me living in Muriwai about 20 years ago, and there was a patch of wild ginger across the road from me, and I used to cross the road and deal to it every now and then. And then we went away and came back 15 years later, and it was still there. I just couldn't believe it. And it hadn't really got that much bigger, so I just decided to have another crack at it. But because I didn't live across the road from it this time, I never really managed to get down there. There was always something better to do with my time. So one day I decided that I would just post on Facebook that I was going to head down there, and if anyone would like to join me, that would be great. And it was a great nudge. And because I'd posted that I'd be there on Sunday, I had to be there in case someone turned up. And for a while, it was just me, but it did make me go down. So it was an effective technique to get me out of the house, and I loved it. Once I'm out, I always love it. But then gradually people would start to join me. And so, you know, I'd have one, or maybe a good day would be 2 people coming along for the half hour each Sunday. And then it's just grown. So that's 4 years ago. And we've got a really lovely regular crew now. People come and go, but we're generally 5 or 6 people, and we're very strict about the half-hour rule. So it's from 9 till 9:30 every Sunday. And we've dealt with some really nasty patches of stuff along the roadside in Muriwai. And it was an interesting process that I went through to get some slides for this presentation, because I didn't really have any before photos, but I went on to Google Maps, and it's an amazing resource if you're working on roadsides. There's 3D images of the areas that we've worked on, and you really can see that they're just huge blankets of climbing weeds covering the bush. And so it's been a slow process getting those landscapes back into shape, because there was nothing left alive underneath them. So for me, the half hour every week is a really great method. We don't use any poisons because there's seeds in the ground anyway. You always have to go back. And so if we just move into the next lot of slides. This is just an article, it'd be too small for you to read tonight, but this is an article that I got interviewed for the council, so there's a bit more information about how we work and what we do. And then the next lot of slides are just before and after photos of some of the areas we work on. So we generally go along to the weed walk, and then we go for a coffee afterwards. And actually in Muriwai we have a green swap that happens at 10 o'clock on a Sunday, so that sort of blended in with the setup too. So it's a really sociable, nice way to start your Sunday. So if you just move through the slides, there's the various, and I like the idea of the fact that we work on the roadsides. It's something that council don't really like doing because it will always come back. The roadsides let light in, so they're a real problematic area. But because we work on those spaces that we drive past every day, I think it gives the volunteers something to enjoy about the process of seeing the landscape being cleaned up. So I think that's a big part of the joy that people get out of it as well. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because it's a slightly different model. the green local environmental group had groups that would come out and they would have really big numbers turning up, but they were only doing that once or twice a year, and we all know that weeds can come back just within weeks. So I just wanted to try a different model, and it feels like it's working. So I just wanted to share the idea in case anyone wanted to have a crack at it in their community.
That's a fabulous idea, thank you. So the first question is, why only half an hour? And you have sort of answered that.
Oh, absolutely. It's just that people have their own lives, and half an hour is just such a quick way. You have to get up and out, but we generally have to drag people away, but I'm really strict about that because I want them to leave hungry for more. So I don't want to take up too much of their time. So the half hour, I think, I actually think that's a real key.
Also, another question, does your group also actively spread bioagents?
No, we don't.
No.
I think that question was directed to Mothplant.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I do a lot of weed work in as a paid person in other areas, and I also just want to say that I really I understand that people like using herbicides, and I did in the early days as well, but it really slows you down. And in fact, you always have to come back anyway. There's seeds in the ground, and the second cut of a plant that you've taken out the most of the greenery the first time round is very easy. Half the time you can just brush the leaves off. I'm really finding that I'm using less and less poison, and absolutely against spraying, because a lot of the areas that I'm working with are areas that have been sprayed, and they're by far the worst areas that I have to deal with, because obviously the weeds come back before anything else.
And people commenting on what a fantastic model it is and how it's really neat you're doing something different. Also, are you concerned about the slipped and vacant land at Muriwai as a result of the cyclone damage?
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating watching it. There's a lot of the wattle is extraordinary the way it's coming through. But a lot of those areas, they've got bush on either side, and I really have noticed that a lot of these weeds, if you've got some healthy bush, moving on to them, I'm quite hopeful about it. Some of those areas we can't get up to because it's too dangerous, and I am seeing the wattle come away, but yeah, we will have to do something about it. It's out of our scope at this stage, but yeah.
Now, someone else is asking about managing traffic safety.
We just on the pavement, yeah.
Perfect. And someone else asking about climbing asparagus.
Yeah, so climbing, it's a lot. I'm about to do a presentation to the community this Sunday, and I'm wanting to let them know the best way of dealing with weeds. And I absolutely am 100% into just cutting away the greenery. Don't dig anything out. It's just not worth it. The amount of time and how it slows you down. Cut away the greenery, come back, cut it again, come back a third time. Most things will be gone by that stage, and then you don't have to worry about getting rid of the material. Climbing asparagus is crazy because they have those underground rhizomes. You think they would hold enough energy to keep going. It's one of the ones that really doesn't like coming back from a decent cutback. We generally come over a space once or twice again, but I'm always surprised at climbing asparagus. If you cut it down low, it takes a while to come back, and so we just always cut and drop with wild ginger, everything. We just cut and drop.
Fabulous. And are there planting programs to replace the weeds?
Yeah, so this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately, because we work on the areas that our community have planted into, and then I also work in gullies that have been fenced off and let to regenerate. And so I go into those gullies and I get rid of all the invasives. And it's sort of funny. For me, it feels a little bit like colonialization of a landscape if you decide what goes where. Whereas if it happens naturally, the seeds are generally in the ground already. And if you keep the weeds away, that it happens naturally. So we have planted out some of the areas we've weeded back, but I'm a much bigger fan of letting nature decide what goes where.
Fabulous. Thank you. I forgot to set the timer, and I think we've gone longer. So if we can move on to the next speaker, that'd be great. And keep your questions coming in. All the comments are really interesting. There's a conversation happening in the chat. So if you're not looking at the chat, it's well worth having a look. Brilliant. So if we could have Bridget.
Kia ora. So do we just go bing when we want the next the next slide?
Yes.
Bing, thank you. So my name's Bridget Palmer and I'm the lead community igniter for Halo Whakatane. I like that that label instead of ops manager or anything like that because I think it's more grassroots. We are Halo Whakatane, and it's the acronym makes me laugh, Richard, because everybody always asks us. I mean, there's a few Halo projects, but you know, what does it stand for? Well, it's not an acronym, Bing. What it does mean is, I'm binging for the person that's Nigel, sorry. So we actually drilled down so we could actually tell people what it's about. So the halo effect for us, and obviously in ecology, is where you focus on one weed or one species, and when you're doing that, it radiates throughout the environment and unintentionally protects many others. So that's what our Halo project is all about, and there are a few. Bing. So we have Halo Whakatane, we have, I'm trying to find my, oh, that's why I haven't got it, because I'm trying to do it on the slide on the side. So our vision is to create an unfenced sanctuary in the heart of Whakatane and to enable te eke to live and thrive. So, and to do so, we have to create an environment where they will do that. And a lot of that is around community engagement. This is our constellation model. And the vision is the same, is to create this amazing habitat. We're at the bottom, we're a cradle, we're not an umbrella, and it's very organic, and the cogs turn in different ways and change, but our vision is still the same, to create an environment where te eke will live and thrive. So we have lots of different initiatives, and we work with the willing, we work with initiatives where we're only a group of 3.5 or 3 to 4. That is 3.5, isn't it? So yeah, it's a small, we work with the willing and other care groups, we support them, and Bing. I feel stupid saying Bing now. I'll have to go down my one. So we work a lot with children. A lot of us say, oh, well, they're our soldiers in the environment. And, you know, it's a hard one because, as we know, it can be incredibly daunting for kids to think that they have to save the world. And so we need to ensure that we enable them, we actually give them, we enable them and give them the skills and the knowledge to be able to do that and walk alongside them. So we're incredibly passionate about finding and enabling young people to enjoy taking action. Whether it be predator control or pulling weeds, and having the opportunity to make a difference, to see the difference that they're making. Bing. So those young girls there, we work with the special education unit. That was the previous slide, and they're incredible. They fill our hearts every Monday morning, and they have got their own comp or moth plant competition team, but they are out every Monday morning doing something in the environment, and there's usually about 10 of these kids. And if you've been on our Halo Whakatane Facebook page, it's full of these kids doing some amazing mahi. This slide is the kura that we work with the last 2 years, Whakatane Intermediate, every Friday, going out for 2 hours and weeding around the Awatapu or Otamakolkol lagoon. And they've removed over 6 tons of weeds from that environment. It gives them that opportunity to take action. We talk a lot around the environment, and when we take them out into the environment, we look a lot at enriched learning. So every opportunity we have, we try to take them out into the environment to look at the environment. What is it made up of? What are the habitats, the species within that habitat, and how can they take action to protect or restore that environment? Bing. We also do work alongside the Hawpes Spit Care Group, and we control invasive weeds of over about 90 hectares in that area, and that's to enhance the site, to enable us to, and the community, to restore the back dunes. And last year we planted around 1,000 plants that were donated to us through Regional Council. And this year we're planting another 1,000. We're also part of Trees for Survival, so we have 10 schools all up now. And those in Auckland probably know Trees for Survival very well. So it gives us another opportunity to allow kids we eco-source the seeds, they germinate the little seedlings, and then just coming up to this time now, also July, August, they'll be planting them in these environments that they've actually removed weeds from. Bing. This was a segue into our DOMP comp, but it was a video of our local plateau compost organisation over in Kawerau, which is about 40 minutes away from us. And in that video, you would have seen this digger digging a hole in this really hot compost, and that's where we put thousands of pods. The operators there are absolutely amazing. They check the temperature, we turn up, they dig the hole, we put the pods in, and they're left there. He's been checking how long it takes for them to decompose even, so that's pretty cool. We're incredibly lucky to have that. Yeah, Bing. So thanks to Richard and his team, his network of moth plant destroyers up in Auckland and Howick and beyond, we've compiled resources and the lessons learnt to run our own Halo competition of the DOMP comp, which, okay, that is an acronym. So the Destruction of Moth Plant competition. We started that last year, and we've kind of dug ourselves a hole. No, we've, like I say, 3.5 of us in our small team. We need our volunteers and we need these kids. We have gone out to these schools each year, the last 2 years, talked to them about, presented to them about the why, what they need to do and the how, and then talk to them about the competition.
Your 5 minutes are up. So
yeah, I'll wrap up. So yeah, so thanks for that, Richard. We haven't got a lot of, we have some regional council buy-in we do kits for each group. We run them through. We've got a video that they go have a look at, and you can look at that on our Facebook page. So these kids are absolutely amazing. So you can Bing for the next 2. So the groundswell has been incredible. So that's the first. The first year we had 15,000 pods, and I think it was 10 teams. This year we had 24 teams and 36,439 pods to get rid of, which is absolutely amazing. So yeah, it's all about community engagement and enabling community to help. So that's me. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. So everyone, throw your questions in the chat, and we can move on to answering them later. But let's welcome Keith, now that he's in the right meeting, to talk about the PFK hit squads.
Thanks very much, everybody. It's great to see so many people here, and great to see Michael Beach here from Weedbusters New Zealand. Welcome along. I've got far too many slides, so I'm not going to go through every detail of every slide, but they will be available if anybody wants to dig in a bit further along. What I'm going to focus on is not just what the group that within Pestry Kaipati we call the PFK Hit Squad, which I think has been going about 6 or 7 years, but I keep meaning to look and I don't know. We're trying to have a multi-faceted approach to what we do. So we do things like stamp, we do things a bit like the walk for weeds, and we also do things a bit like a sort of contractor would, of going back to a site and having site-led control. And we're using Econet's CAMS GIS, the Weedsy toolkit, and we also use the CAMS CRM, and I'll talk a bit more about that. Oh, sorry, next slide, please. I pressed my down button, it didn't work. For those of you who don't know where Kaipatiki is, that's the area with all the weeds showing on that map, using the same symbology as you saw on Richard Henty and Nigel Charman's maps. And this is a dashboard that's been compiled to allow you easily to identify what the status of weeds is within a particular area. Next slide, please. So here's another view of the map, and what we've done with input from Nigel Charman of Wellington and brilliant help from Anise Shansel, who is a GIS specialist at Eagle Technology, is to develop a concept of places where you can draw a polygon around anything and define it as being a weed control area or a management unit. So this is showing the edge of the lower edge of Tough Crater on Auckland's North Shore, a project led by Richard Hursthouse and Paul Piper and others. And what it allows you to do is to identify what's going on in a particular management unit or weed control area. So part of the purpose is this: you don't need to record a dot for every weed that you find in an area. You can just record it once for that area. But if a stamper comes through and finds a moth plant you've missed, their dot will turn up in your area as well, and you can go back and deal with it as and when you see fit. It's also intended so that if somebody volunteers to look after a particular area, and we did that around my local reserve, we asked people to look around, visit the sites in their street. You can record who it is that's doing that job, and it allows you to manage things with a lot less administrative overhead. Next slide, please. So before we head out doing a campaign around a halo, we have used the CAMS CRM database to email everybody we have in the contact system. So for example, doing around Leroy's Bush, I think I emailed 400 people. And emailing has the effect of reinforcing what we do. So by and large, most sites that are owner occupied tend to become right within a year or two. The people learn about it and they keep an eye out for moth plant and woolly nightshade and the other things we draw their attention to. And so when we visit those sites, there was a elderly Chinese couple in one site, and I walked in the door and they said, "Oh, you're from the hit squad." "Yes, we've done all our moth plant." And that really brings joy to my aging ears, because it means that our campaign is achieving something. Yep, next slide, please. So basically, we try to get volunteers to work in small teams at Polygon. We used to all meet in one place and then hand out sheets of paper and divvy up. But basically that lost the first 20 minutes of the time. But also it meant people were fragmented and going to different sites each time. They didn't develop familiarity with the area. And if people forgot to fill in the map, other people would go along and revisit the same site. What this shows here is you can click on the map, and in the left-hand graphic, you can see that the dots on the map have turned teal blue. That means they've been selected. Then you click on the button which says click for weeds table, and on the right hand side it shows that table comes up. You click on the fifth button from the right in the top corner, and that puts into the table only those weeds selected from the map, and then you can select which columns you want to see and export that into a spreadsheet. Now, as most of you will know, you have to be very careful that if people create a spreadsheet, they don't go and keep all their notes in the spreadsheet. So you have to make sure that the information about what they've done comes back into the map in due course. But we have a few people who just don't want to use apps or maps or anything like that. So they take the spreadsheet, they mark it up and give it to me, and I do the data entry. Next slide, please. Some of our group use the map on their phone. Some refuse to. We have a retired zoology professor who takes a dictaphone with him, and he writes up a detailed list before he goes out with his workmate. They do their sites. He talks into the dictaphone as he goes, and he writes it all up at the end, which there's 101 ways of doing things. And just as a mention, I know that there's at least one person on the call who uses the offline map because they do most of their work out of internet coverage. So that's another aspect of using a world quality product like ArcGIS. And I found, I was out there this morning doing moth plant around Leroy's bush.
That's your 5 minutes up.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
The other advantage of using the phone map is you can actually see where you are with respect to a boundary. We're in an area of bush down the back of large properties, and you never really quite knew where you are, whereas taking the phone map with you, you can just click on it and show you within a few meters of accuracy whether you're on the bush, whether you're in the reserve or on the property. Next slide, please. Yeah, I'll skip over that. Please, if you read it and want to know more, let me know. That sort of shows the 3 phases of what we do. The important part is engaging with residents. You go and door knock. The next part is actually getting rid of the pods and the weeds. We do woolly nightshade routinely along with moth plant, and we'll do other weeds if we have time. And the most important phase is the weekly lunch afterwards. And it's amazing how long people stay and chat. I think Muriwai sounds like the same. Next slide, please. I'll skip that one completely, but what it emphasizes is I'll take one particular point out of that. Back prior to 2021, PFK was using a system that had been independently developed alongside Stamps map, Richard Henty's map. And it meant that volunteers who were working in Kaipatiki and in other areas had trouble working out which map to use. And what I'd say is going forward, it's really important that data all goes into the same database if you really want things to be effective. Also, if you're working with council, having a map that can be shared in ArcGIS with the council's map. We haven't quite got to the point where the council contractors will share what they do with us. This has been a arm wrestle that's been going on for 15 years, but we hope in the next round of contracts that'll work. Next slide, please. Oh, that's a slide I put in when I was talking, Weed Busters were kind enough to invite me along. So again, read that offline. But I will just mention one of the important things, the wonderful work that Nigel Charman did in creating the iNaturalist interface means you now have a tool that allows you to identify low incident pest plants or sleeper weeds. So if you're not sure what something is, you can take a photo of it, and even if the iNaturalist doesn't identify the species using artificial intelligence, there's wonderful botanists out there who, I assume, during the ads on TV, they look up what's been reported in iNaturalist and tell you that what you thought might have been one thing is actually something slightly different. So moving on from that, please. And that's what we hope to do in the future. So we've run out of time. So next slide, please, is... Oh yeah, we also created an app with PFK's idea to record where slips are. So you out in Muriwai, we sympathise with you. We had a lot of slips, luckily without loss of human life. So if anybody's interested, please get back to me on that. And the next slide, please. This is a tracking app which Nigel and I worked on with a woman up in Whangarei. And most tracking apps cost quite a lot of money. So with advice from one of our expert volunteers from Oamaru, Fung developed this app, which shows you where you can go, and you can also take photos of things you see along the way. So I was using that in the bush today, and it's good to see where you've actually walked. Next slide, please. And there's some links if you want to find various bits and pieces. That document up the top called Friendly Relations. I'd love somebody to come along and rewrite it, but it's what I wrote about 3 or 4 years ago to give to people when they're first going out door knocking. Thank you very much, and sorry I overran my time.
That's all right. Thanks, Keith. Someone was asking, what's the great looking pod picker contraption?
They are made by Wolf in Germany, Wolf Garten Tools, and it's there are several models that they produce, but it's the extendable fruit picker pole. So it telescopes out to 4 meters long, and you can either have a basket on the end, or one of our volunteers used big cup type things, quite large ones, which you can just clip in and clip out. We also have a clip-in saw. So when we had to remove 700 or 800 moth plant from a puhutakawa in Birkenhead Primary, we were able to saw the branches from the centre of the puhutakawa 3-4 metres up, so that we could get to the plants that were 5 metres up by standing on a container roof.